Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a special Comic Art Spotlight. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late, shifting from one studio to the next and just getting myself introduced to Koom. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, so tonight I am the interview subject, and that's going to be interesting, right? I mean, we haven't had to do that. Obviously, I talk a lot about myself during these shows, but having the subject of a show just about me is a little daunting to say the least. But yeah, Billigan's origin story. Yeah, fancy seeing everybody here. Yeah, who's the Bill fella? Thank you, Mikhail. Same old faces, everybody. That's how it is, guys. A very it's going to be a very fun night. I am certain. No, I don't think we're going to talk mini golf tonight, but you never know, Marcus. There could be a mini golf story in there somewhere. One where I shed a tear about all that artwork that I sold. But hey, let me bring Koom in, and we can kind of get this show on the road. Good evening. Oh, and Jordan too. Hey, and so hey, Koom.
Hey.
Basically, nice to meet you, because we only had about 30 seconds in the green room before we got this thing going.
I know. And I'm so glad you're doing this, because I think it's going to be a fun night, an unusual night. And it's going to be interesting because I think your massive popularity and my unpopularity might actually balance out.
Well, I don't know about my mass popularity. It's comic art fans' mass popularity, but I guess I had a hand in that. But it is what it is.
I was thinking about you, and I was like, how can I explain Bill Cox to people who don't collect comic art? And I would say he is the Mark Zuckerberg of the comic book art world, in a positive way. Like, not Mark Zuckerberg who takes people's private information and sells it and allows hate speech to flourish, but the Mark Zuckerberg who's like the genius, who's like, all we now need is comic book art to like blow up. And I can say I can remember way back when I interviewed Bill Cox, accessible in his island fortress.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. But the thing was, you think about it. And I've said this many times. We were out there before Facebook, so before Zuckerberg was stealing ideas from his roomies. Basically, we came up with the idea for CAF and put it out there long before they did. So, well, not long before, 1 year. I'd say we were 1 year ahead of Facebook. So, if only I would have had Facebook as my dream kind of idea, but I didn't. I had a much simpler idea.
Well, Carlos Moe just said no. He's the Stan Lee of comic book art, which I think is worse, because that means you were just stealing from your roommates, but you were stealing from everybody you professional. I should be careful.
Yeah. Come on, this is a fun show. We don't want to talk about the negatives in the hobby.
Right.
And Marvel is my favorite publisher. So
yeah, obviously. I mean, one of the things we're going to have to talk about is the decor you have in that room that you always broadcast from. Like, I have to ask about the lighted Wolverine and like, what is that room? Is that like a special kind of torture room for people who aren't into?
Not really. The Wolverine is a very early eBay pickup. I've got a Sonic the Hedgehog whiteboard that is not on the wall that I kind of bought for my kids, but I probably used it a lot more than they did, and it's got some neon on it. I should hang that up and put it over there. It'd look pretty cool. Most of the other stuff is just various art pickups, or things. I mean, like the alien head, that used to be like a sucker display at someplace. I think I picked that up on eBay as well. The Captain America mask, Berkey gave that to me as a joke a few months back when it didn't fit him. He couldn't put it on his head, and he made me try it on. He kind of makes me out to be his trained monkey all the time, so I had to take that home with me. The Hellboy Hand was part of. I get inquiries all the time from the oddest places, as far as people contacting me through CAF and having strange things to sell. And yeah, usually it's comic art or comic related, but I had someone contact me that had this estate that had nothing in it that I wanted. And it was a lot of statues and other movie props. And I kind of said, I know somebody in that area who might be able to just buy this whole estate for you. And so I directed them to them. And once I saw the images that were part of it, I said, hey, if there's anything, I've never asked for a commission when I've done this before, and I should, I guess, all the time. But for this one time, I said, that Hellboy hand would look really good. on my shelf, behind me. And so that when it did all go through, the Hellboy hand was shipped to me, and you can actually wear it too. So I didn't know that.
Interesting. I have a question for later on about, other things you can get into, and maybe you're already into them. Like maybe you already are fielding a lot of the things. But I want to ask about that painting. The painting, I can recognize Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I think that's Judy Garland. And then like 3 more paintings to the right from that. There's like a woman who's kind of looking up in a storm.
It's strange, but and I did. Thanks for letting me know the prop store icon was still on there, everybody. I left that on from the other show, but the image.
Yeah, I thought it was Mona Lisa.
So this one's by Bob Eggleton. Actually, he's been around for 30, 40 years as a science fiction fantasy painter. That is actually a painting of my daughter, if you can believe that. We go to a show called IX every year in Pennsylvania. And Bob is there a lot. My daughter, she's 18. She just graduated high school, and she's gone with me many times because she would go in and she would. It's really an artist show, and she would go in and actually pose. And they wouldn't do live painting or anything, but a lot of the artists there would do photography and then take that home as reference material. And they had many people that would come in and dress up. Tatiana would go to that show as well, who's a good friend of mine from TD Art Gallery. She would spend an hour in costume for them, and so one year I came back to IX, and Bob's like, "Hey, I did this painting of your daughter," and here I'm thinking he might give it to me or something, but no, he sold it to me. But I was happy to have it because it was something you'll never get somebody like Bob to do a commission where he's going to paint a family member. So I was happy to get it, and it was some. I'd have to go back and look at my notes because he used some reference material as far as a character that I wasn't familiar with from a novel that he had done several book covers from. And he said that he was going to use her as his muse and his reference point for other works that he was going to do. So, and other than that, the other one is actually my daughter as well from a different photo session. And that's right beside that right there is another Bob Eggleton painting. So I picked up a lot of science fiction, fantasy works when I go to that show, and they just and typically they're always framed when I get them from there, and so they're easy to hang on the wall. So a lot of the images that you see behind me are pickups from the IX shows, even like the Sasquatch Yeti foot there. A sculptor friend of mine, made those, and I said, that would look really funny on the wall. And then a lot of this other stuff is mostly props from Dueling Dealers. Whether it's the Thor helmet, the Loki tiara, as everybody likes to call it, Thor's hammer. This is actually a Daryl Sweet painting that I picked up from Doug Elsnor about a month ago. It's a prelim to one of the Xanth novels, and I've always, it's one of my favorite books that I've read when I was in high school, or series of books, and I know I'd never be able to own an actual Daryl Sweet full-size painting, so just being able to get a prelim was really a joy for me. And then like that Wolverine Cyclops print, that was something that I ran an ad for a advertiser on CAF, and somehow I sold and it was a poster store. I don't even know what it was, like movieposters.com. This would have been like 15 years ago, and I sold more posters than anybody else. And so that they had done this with, and so they sent me a free print that's signed by Byrne, and it's a Byrne and Austin image. So
that's awesome. I noticed that like your family is a big part of your CAF gallery. So are your kids kind of grown up now, or are they still young? Are you kind of enjoying the medium or the hobby through them?
My son is 22, and I've got an 18-year-old daughter. Like I mentioned, she just graduated, Gwen, and then another daughter who's 16. So she'll be a junior in high school next year, and Gwen will be starting college next year. So, they're still all, my son just finished his studies at Kent State this spring as well. So yeah, it's an interesting point in my life. I mean, leading up to where we are now, I kind of slowed down my art purchasing after, everybody knows I built a miniature golf course. And then as my kids got older and I started thinking about college and trying to prepare for them, I did slow down my art purchasing because I put myself in a big hole building this golf course. But but my kids played.
Hold on. Was this a miniature golf course just for your family, or was this
No,
like a business?
it's a real business. Yeah, if you go to
Wow.
chipsclubhouse.com, everybody, you can see the golf course that I built. It was in 2008 is when it opened. But well, so to say that my family has always been, I've worked from home. I used to work my prior job before becoming self-employed. I worked for a magazine publisher for 5 years. And my role there was I was their IT manager, but I also was their lead with the web development team that they had brought in. I worked there from 97 until 2002. And we were always, our focus was on bringing all of their print magazines to an online format so that they could have other ways to market their their advertising opportunities. And so I got a lot of website development experience working for them. Things that I did there came over to CAF as far as some of the advertising concepts. That whole left-hand column with the sponsor small buttons, that was something that we had come up with when we were building these community sites in these other portals. And the portals were boring. They were in the landscape contractor market, pest control. One of the magazines was called Recycling Today. Nothing fun, glamorous. It wasn't like working for Entertainment Weekly. It was, I'd go out and look at lawnmowers when I would go out and do business meetings with Toro and John Deere and all those kind of companies. But I learned a lot about, how to work with clients and how to present a community, because that was really the focus of what they were doing.
Well, let's start with your origin story. So, where were you born? Where did you grow up? And how did you discover comics?
Wow, I didn't think we were going to go back this far. All right, I grew up. I was born in basically a place called Medina, Ohio, and I am an adopted son, and I'm the proudest one. And my parents were awesome. We basically got to. I got to do everything I ever wanted. My mom was incredibly supportive of everything that she exposed me to. She was a teacher, and she just loved the fact that I love comics and reading. And so I love comics at an early age. I can't tell you how many comics I destroyed as a child just because, I would just tear them up. I'd clip the characters out, and remember those old like construction sets where you could build skyscrapers and stuff, and you could place you could build these giant skyscrapers, right? Sure. out of these funny little model things, and make them into different ones. And I would just sit there and I'd cut the characters out of these comics, and I'd just be smacking the towers and busting the walls out. So that was my introduction to comics, was basically just trashing them all for, and I trashed many of them. But really, it's really my uncles. They had a lot of comic books growing up, and I didn't get to trash those, but they were the ones who introduced me to early Marvel comics. A lot of early Doctor Strange was one of the more popular titles that they would let me read. And so I was turned on to comics at an early age. I drew, I thought I was a good artist. And so growing up, I spent a lot of time, aping John Byrne, and I really felt like that was going to be my calling, was to be an illustrator. And so I did end up I majored in art in high school, and I had a lot of different opportunities. I was one of those Gold Key, art winners throughout high school. And so, I thought I had a future in comics, but I went to an art school in Beverly, Massachusetts. It's Montserrat College of Art. And unfortunately, their illustration program wasn't, that deep, and they were more esoteric. So once I started working there, doing artwork there, they just steered me totally away from comics and illustration, entirely. And I ended up doing more sculpture and performance work. Ironically, I did a lot of, I like creating events for people, as it turned out. And that's really where
but you weren't a performance artist. You'd do more installations and stuff.
I would do installation art. Yeah, I would. I should have brought those kind of scans. I mean, I did one of the first things that I did as a freshman, and it was a group project. I kind of came in and I said, hey, how about you guys help me build this thing? And we basically took over this whole room. It was kind of a waiting room at the college. And one evening, because I got permission to do it, we basically brought in all these sticks from outside, and we created these woven wood things that spanned the whole room. They made us take it all out the next day because they hated it and they thought it was a fire hazard. But it was my, it's like I had this idea, and I was like, let's all do this together. It'll be fun, and it'll be interactive. And of course, it was all those things. But I guess I've always liked putting things in front of people and trying to create an experience. My final project at college was I can't remember. It was a sculpture class, but what I did was I created these boats for every single person in the class, and they were paper mache and so that we could actually get them out. And I coated them with some kind of a water sealant thing, and I set it so you'd put those the rocket, the rocket engines that you'd have that you could shoot up, and I put that into all of the boats, and so we basically hosted a big regatta and filmed it all. And, launching these boats off. Some of them just went face down in the water and just pushed around, and other ones maybe went 40 feet. Some of them just took off, straight into the sky. But so we filmed the whole thing. And then what I did with that was I made a book out of it. I took all the film and photography that came from that and made it into this really cool, piece that I repurposed it. I took something and then made it fun. And I showed off what it was like to build them, and then what it was like to launch them off, and just the event of everybody watching it, because a lot of people from the college came out to watch the whole thing as well. So that was really my that was my final hurrah at school, and it was a fun project because it was all multimedia. I mean, back then I was shooting everything in Super 8 because this is 1990, 1991, and I'm sure there might have been VHS, recorders then, but I wasn't using them. I was shooting everything in Super 8 because I thought that was more appropriate for what we were doing. I was using Polaroid cameras, and and I still have all that material. It was a lot of fun to do. It's a lot of fun to involve.
The camcorders were really bulky then, but the Super 8 weren't. It's just
exactly
like, I don't know, 8 minutes or something at a time. That was probably Super 8.
Exactly. Right. And I would, I even took like a Barbie bus and put like 8 rocket engines in that, and put the Super 8 camera behind the wheel, and just shot that across the parking lot and filmed that, and then took that out and just made it part of this bigger video project. So, that was my first kind of foray into getting into doing, and because they were all group projects again. I had to have 2 other people doing filming it, and it was just very involved. And so I think just from the very beginning of my creative career, I was always focused on involving as many people as I could with what I was doing.
Sure. And that really kind of answers another question I was going to ask you about. Where did you get the idea for galleries, for CAF? That totally makes sense. But before we kind of talk about how you connected back to comics and CAF, when did you discover comic book art? Did you kind of discover it early on, or like when you were an adult, or?
No. And I like Mikhail's comment that I invented the flash mob. It's true. Back in like 1990, we were doing those things. It was fun. But yeah, when did I discover comic art? That, I was a big X-Men and Thor comic collector. And once, it was around 97. I had been working with the publisher for a while, and it was my first real job that paid money. Prior to that, I worked as a metalsmith for 3 years, and I couldn't get. It was a. See, we should at least talk about that. I worked because I was taking my sculpture knowledge and was able to work doing a lot of welding and fabrication at a place in Cleveland or near Cleveland. And I thought like I was applying. I at least had a job with something I knew, because I didn't have a graphic design background. I was very nuts and bolts, and I liked working with my hands. And I think that and so it worked out well. But when I met my wife at a bar, Maureen, and we hit it off. And she was a programmer, and she worked for a company called Rockwell Automations here in Cleveland. And so we eloped. 6 months later, we went to Vegas, got married, brought friends out. So again, same kind of thing, creating events for friends of mine to have a good time. And
hold on, why did you elope? Were you worried that your parents would approve, or?
No, not at all. I love her parents, and they're still around and lots of fun. But like the first time I met Maureen's father, I guess she had dated guys with long hair before too, so he just didn't like it. If I wasn't clean cut, you knew that I wasn't going to be on his A list. And I got invited to. Well, she's like, "Here, Bill, go hang out with Dad while I go do something upstairs." So I walked in to meet Jack, and he had a newspaper in front of him, and he lowered it. He looked at me, and he didn't even say anything to me. And then he just raised it back up, and that was my introduction. He probably figured he was never going to see me again. I think I might have mumbled a few nice things to him, and then Maureen came down and saved me, and we got out of there.
I think that's the kind of relationship I'd like to have with any man who's the father of somebody I date. No word, just eye contact for 2 seconds, and then goodbye.
Right. And so, like I said, I really think he never thought he'd see me again. And but that wasn't why we eloped. We just thought, it was just that silly, funny idea. Why don't we go and do this? Even though you're your father's last daughter that isn't married, and I'm sure he's expecting something completely different. We're gonna go. Let's just go do this, and it'll be fun. We'll come back and just see what happens. And we did that. We had Elvis walk Maureen down the aisle. She wore this nice green chiffon dress, and I had a sharkskin jacket on that I still have in the closet. And Elvis played a concert after it was all over. But when we got to the airport to in Vegas to fly home, I call my mom. She's thrilled. She's like, oh, that's so great. I can't wait to see you. I'll be there to meet you, because back then you could still, you could meet him at the gate. And so Maureen calls her dad, and his response was, yeah, I'll have a lawyer meet you at the gate. So
was he being half serious, or was he upset?
No. Well, I think he was more disappointed probably that we didn't, do the right thing and have the marriage or the wedding actually, in front of everybody. But we ended up doing a vows ceremony about 3 weeks later, and so he was able to have that moment. The whole family was, and because I look back on it now and it's like I didn't think that through at all. We didn't really. You think about getting married, and you really should involve everyone. You shouldn't be selfish and just do this small ceremony that you only have your closest friends at, which is what we did. So, I'm a little older now. I was 26 when I did that, and so 27 years later, I'm still incredibly happily married to Maureen, and we've done all these great things in comic art, and it's amazing where we got started to how we've gotten here. But that was an interesting time. But her being a programmer, she did not like me working as a metalsmith, because I'd come home and I was just tired, dirty. And there just came a point in time where she said, I want you to have a desk job. What do you want to do? And so I thought I had been playing a lot of online games, and I was creating these web pages for the games that I liked. And I said, well, the internet seems kind of cool. And this is probably 95, 96. So there's really no profession for web designers out there at all. And she just said, well, okay, quit your job. I'll let you go back to school and take some classes in Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, and then let's see where that leads you. And so that was really how I got started. She let me quit the job, and I took a few classes in town, and I got a job immediately in doing some pre-press work that was all done digitally. And then from there, one morning, because I always open this place up, I got a call from somebody that said, hey, I know this is not the right place to call, but I'm looking for somebody that I might be able to hire to do website design for my new business. And I was like, I know just the guy. And so that was how I got my first, so I left that company and started working for this web company. And I worked for them up until I started working for the publisher.
And then the publisher was where you discovered comic book art.
It was, yes. When I was there, we, like I said, I was completing my Thor and X-Men run. I was at a Wizard World show in Chicago around 1998, and I completed the run on the first day. And so I was going to be there a couple more days with my friend Chris Haggard, and he had completed a similar goal. I can't remember what series he was trying to get, but we just happened to be walking down an aisle and with money to burn, and I ran into Tom Fleming's setup, and from Fanfare Sports and Entertainment. He's no longer a rep as of, I believe, 2 years ago, but I ran into him and Philip Anderson. They were set up in the same booth, like a corner aisle, and I just saw this art. and was blown away. It brought me back to all the, me drawing as a kid, wanting to draw comics and seeing the artwork. I mean, I think the first pieces I picked up, because this was right after the first X-Men movie, I believe I picked up like 6 pieces by Mike Miller that were costume related sketches for
that would be the summer of 2000, if I'm remembering correctly.
Would have, well, I guess it could have been. I mean, I think it was.
Somebody can corroborate that, or I can look that up while you're talking.
Yeah. It may be. Well, maybe I didn't start art collecting until later. I thought it was 98, 99.
Go ahead.
Maybe it was 2000.
Go ahead. I'll look it up while you're talking.
All right. But so yeah, I didn't really talk to Tom.
Yeah, according to Wikipedia, X-Men was released in 2000, and I remember seeing it in the summer of 2000.
I've been lying to everybody all this time then. Now, see, this really is an expose, everybody. So I really only started collecting original art.
Vagaries of memory. I find this all the time when I'm trying to recall stuff, and I have to use markers. I have to remember where I was in my life to remember something significant. And you thought it was earlier because maybe psychologically you feel it's such a big part of your life that you.
Well, right. I mean, I started. Right. Well, it's hard to imagine that I came up with the idea for CAF so quick, being in the hobby then, because Comic Art Fans launched in February 2003, and we had worked on it for about 6 months leading up to that point. So that means we would have started probably around August of 2002. So.
Did you know a lot of people who were collecting? I want to ask you, how did you come up with the idea for it? It's sort of like Lord of the Rings, it's the one ring that unites them all. Like your site is the portal for the hobby,
Right. Well, back then there was a lot of different things going on. There were a lot of collectors that had their own websites that they were hosted on free services like GeoCities and all these other places. And there was the Comic Art L that was a mailing list through Yahoo. And what would happen a lot was an art collector would say they updated their website and they put the link out there to GeoCities, and you might see it, the link, about a half hour later in your email. You click on it, you go to their site, and there would just be a big message that said this user has used up their allotted bandwidth. Come back again later. And because all these people, comic art collectors, were using these free services that they weren't paying for, and you could never look at their collections. And who would ever think to go back? I mean, you get distracted, and I'd never go look at it. And at that time too, they had
were you saying that comic art collectors were posting their collections on other people's sites?
No, they had their own sites. There were a lot of collectors that actually made their own sites because there was no site like CAF out there. The only site that was out there was hosted on the site on a service called the Long Box, and it was essentially the Lowry, and after Bruce Lowry, they allowed you to have 5 artworks in your gallery at a time, and that was it. And the problem with that was that I need a drink of water. That's the problem that is. So
yeah, go for it. Do we get washroom breaks when we do this, or do we have to piss in a jar?
Oh man, that's what you have to do. I'll go full screen when you do that, though, so nobody has to see.
Did you ever read Jonah's show?
Yeah. Yes, and I'm still losing my voice here. But okay, so there were these options out there for people to post their galleries, but again, when you only could post 5 works, sometimes they would kind of have a theme kind of concept, but most people would typically show only like 5 artworks that they wanted to sell. There were those kind of guys, and then there were other guys that would only show their 5 best pieces. You would never get to see, all the convention sketches and things or commissions that people were getting, because they just would never show them. And the people that had their own websites, because a lot of people were savvy back then. Will Gabrielle, had his own site. I mean, he was kind of a dealer back then, but it was also like his collector's site. And Mancuda had his own site, because a lot of those guys built those sites with the intent to say, I'll buy comic art. So they were smart. I mean, they were doing that, before anybody else was putting these little feelers out there to get you to contact them so they could buy from their want list. And they still do it today. You can go to Will's site right now, and it's got here's my want list, and it's the same list he probably had on there back in 2000, around when I started. So that was the impetus. I just decided that I'm a web developer. At that point, I had started off on my own probably around 99, maybe even 98. because I was fortunate enough with the publisher, I said, hey, my son was born in '98, and I decided that what I wanted to do was be able to stay home and watch him grow up. And so I went to the owner of the company and I said, you're paying me a lot of money to be here, and how about you just pay me the same amount of money to stay home? And Maureen was already as a contractor at that time. So that was how we really started the business, with the publisher as my first real client. So I'd been working on my own for about 3 years, and I had my own servers at that point. And I just thought, well, I'll just build my own site, because the other problem was back then was, and everybody knows the story about my experience with Mike Berkey at the beginning of my career, going to his house and at an invite, they were having a big art get together. And what happened was I didn't know anybody. Mike didn't know me. It's the first time he had ever seen me. And I got relegated to sit on the floor in the living room while Mike and all of the, more tenured collectors were in the kitchen on the, at the dining room table looking at all the Kirby's. Well, I got stuck looking at the $100 to $500 bins, and it was a little uncomfortable in there because I, believe it or not, I'm really, really shy. At least I was at that point, and I just couldn't think of how do I wedge myself in over there with those guys. And so I
open your wall.
Yeah. Well, that would have helped. Right? Well, they don't know me. They look at you. They don't know if you have any money. I mean, it's the same story that we see today. When people come into the hobby, they're always, you're always outmatched by so many other collectors, and they don't know what you're willing to spend or not spend. And I wouldn't have been savvy enough to go and look at the Kirby's and say, wow, I'd like to own that. I was kind of happy looking at what I was looking at because it was more modern artworks. I remember I picked up the cover to the Cyclops 1 by Mark Teixeira that was from the miniseries. I remember picking up a few pieces there. So I spent money, but I didn't have that opportunity to sorry, I'm getting pinged by all kinds of people that are making fun of me. At any rate, bottom line was, I felt if I made comic art fans, not only would I at least be providing a good service for all these collectors who were using these free services, but also it would help bring out artwork that I wanted to see. But it would also be a way for me to introduce myself to everybody in the hobby, so that they would get to know me. I would be able to get to know them, because being an introvert, I was just like, well, I don't know how to get this ball rolling. So if I do this, then that's how it'll work. And so that's what we did. My friend Chris Haggard was at that point working for me as well, and Maureen and I. So the three of us just kind of set out what the blueprint was for how the galleries were going to work and what data we were going to collect, and we put it all together and then launched it on the 1st of February in 2003. So and it really didn't catch on very quickly the first couple of years. There were probably still, probably 500 or 600 people signed up for the site in that first year. And we evolved it quickly because the first designs were awful, and we hadn't thought it through as well as we needed to, and we didn't know what the direction was going to be. I was doing interviews with artists. I was going to conventions, because a lot of things they did on the comic art mailing list was that they do convention reports and things with the artist focus on it. So for me, it was like, all right, I'm going to go to 8 or 9 conventions every year, and I'll write stories about what art I picked up and my experiences with the artists. And so, and I even did phone interviews with several artists. Adam Hughes. I've got them all. They're actually in the news section on CAF. You just can't search them because I've never added that feature. But that was, so we just weren't really sure what we were going to do, what the direction was. We knew we wanted galleries, and that was the main thing. And we knew how we wanted to structure those galleries and what we wanted to allow collectors to do with them. And that was basically have essentially a limitless space to post as much artwork as they wanted for 100% free. And it wasn't, we didn't enter it with the idea that it was going to be a business or anything. It was Chris and I, as art collectors, were just trying to build something that we wanted, because I didn't want to go out and build my own website, and, billsart.com, it just wasn't, not the concept that I wanted to do. I didn't have time for that. Chris didn't want to do that. And so CAF made sense. And I know we had at least 20 different names that we had scribbled out on paper, but comic art fans ended up staying. That was the sticky one that hung around and that we kept because it just flowed. It was the answer to the riddle. What are we? We're fans.
I just noticed a couple of comments. Nick said I'm doing a good job, so thank you. My mom will be proud. And Ruben said 500 or 600 in the first year is fantastic. I know that you're going to end up talking a lot, so if you need a break at times, I mean, we can start discussing things in your gallery, or I can wax a little or something.
I'm good. I'm good. Now that I got the water here, so I'm good. But
Let me just go back up. So if you weren't
Yeah.
charging back then, you obviously weren't thinking about a premium membership model at that time. Were you making money
No.
off of advertising?
No.
How were you funding your trips to all these conventions, even if it was only 8 or 10?
Well, I mean, I just
I guess you had
afforded
your
it
regular job, yeah.
because of but I was a consultant. At that point, I was not employed by anybody. I was paying my own health, and so from '99 onward, 98. My son was born in summer of '98. Easily by the winter of '99, I was, I'd left that other company to do this work on my own. It was a very big risk because Maureen didn't, when Ashton was born, she didn't go back to work. She had worked right up until then, but Ashton was a little needy or whatever. She decided to stay home. So she stays home and I stay home. So we take the biggest risk that you could ever do by essentially having a child, moving into a new home in Chardon, and then having no real employment, just relying on our own moxie to kind of create whatever we were going to create, and just a belief in ourselves that we could work for other clients, and we did a lot of different things. We built CAF, but I still was very engaged with the publisher until about 2008. So I had that work going on. I had done, at one point I actually had about 12 captured consultants and programmers that were working for me because I had so many different things going on. So when CAF had started, it really was just a side project, and the one I wasn't making any money on, but I didn't care because that wasn't why I built it. But I had all these other things, and so that was how we were able to travel to the shows and to get out and and still be buying art happily. But the concepts of premium memberships and advertising really didn't start. At least 4 or 5 years into CAF, so around 2007, 2008, when the site was really taking off, and and we were finding ourselves devoting more and more of our personal time to CAF and spending a little less time on the consulting. That's when you start seeing your money, when the income take a hit. I still had these consultants that were working for me in other places, but when Maureen and I and Chris stopped doing as much consulting and more focusing on CAF, you began to notice that you weren't bringing as much money into the house or into those businesses. But I never talked about it, but that was what was going on. But we were doing it because we just enjoyed it and we thought there was potential to do more. But we started having people ask if they could donate money because they wanted to support our work. And I never wanted to take donations from anybody for anything. I just never felt that wasn't why I was doing it.
Right.
And so I would always turn them down. And so, I started thinking, all right, maybe if I start expanding what the site is and how it can be used and making it better, then maybe I could have this membership concept. And that way, then I feel like I'm giving them a service. If I'm giving them a service, then I'm happy to have them give me $50 a year. I didn't want them giving me a $50 donation every year. And so we probably spent 6 or 8 months kind of planning and plotting out what that first iteration was going to be of a premium membership, because I didn't want to alienate people who weren't going to be premium members, but I wanted to give those people who wanted to contribute to the work that we were doing a way to do it. And so it was slow going initially because I've always been the worst marketer. I still am. Everybody knows that. We're still learning about what all the premium features are today, but a lot of people supported us right away. And so we probably had a couple hundred people being premium members within the first year, and a lot of them probably just because they wanted to make sure that we were taken care of, that they were contributing in some way, because it really helped us have more time to only focus on comic art fans. Without that early investment from the collectors, we wouldn't have been able to firmly believe that there was something here that we could build off of, and then also financially just kind of stop what we were doing elsewhere that was paying the bills and then focus on CAF. So it was it was a good feeling. And then advertising wise, believe it or not, Jim Halpern from Heritage contacted me probably in the same time frame, and he said, hey,
Not
I
from
like
The
your site.
Office? Not Jim Halpert from The Office? No,
No, no, not that one. No, this is the owner of
Jim
Heritage, and
Halpern, yeah.
and he said, I like what you're doing. And I knew he had a calf gallery, and he was like, what can we do advertising wise with you?
Mm.
And so I'm, at the time I didn't have ads, and I had to start. So I had to think about, well, how do I want to integrate advertising into calf? Because up until then it was a very altruistic thing. It was just galleries, but now it's like, all right, if somebody wants to pay me a monthly fee, I should probably figure this out, because again, it's back to that. I'm trying to correct the cash flow back the other way. And
like Facebook. So your next step is obviously to sell stock and go public.
I don't think we're going to go that far. But yeah, I mean, but you're right. It's the same kind of pattern that Facebook was on, right? I mean, they were free, they were open, they had no ads, and then all of a sudden they started having ads. So we did. We had to work that into the whole equation, and I mean, for better or for worse. I mean, a lot of people complain about the ads and that sort of thing, but
I think they're great because it's like a one-stop shop for everything comic art related, whether it's advice, it's discussions, just trying to find stuff that, you don't know who has whatever means whatever to you, and you can just look at it. And, I mean, it's a ton of stuff. Where did you get the idea for people to have different galleries? Was that like an inspiration that you had early on? Around 2005, 2006, I remember there was a website called MOBA, the Museum of Bad Art. They were making a play MoMA. And if people haven't seen it, it's a really funny virtual gallery. It's from Dedham, Massachusetts, and they have really funny descriptions on their art. But they had galleries back then, and that was the first time I kind of realized, a website can kind of mimic going to an art gallery as opposed to just being a flat website of pages, with that kind of font that's kind of
well, I mean, it was I mean, I look back at it, I mean, there really weren't, I mean, there were gallery sites, but everything was so different back then, and the concept of
idea from the beginning, or did you develop it later?
No, everything that you see today was there from day one.
Really?
I mean, I knew that I wanted to be able to have my own gallery. I wanted to be able to organize my own gallery. So I wanted to be able to have gallery rooms to place the art. So it's like I own a gallery, and it's got multiple rooms in it that anybody can walk into and wander through, and you get to choose how you want to organize your rooms. You can organize it by publisher or title or character, your favorite artist. And, we've made modifications subtly here or there, but by and large, the whole concept of gallery room artwork has always been how CAF has been structured from the first day we built it. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, I guess you look back at it, I didn't have anything that I could really compare it to other than knowing what I wanted out of it, and knowing that there needed to be order. There needed to be some way to kind of pigeonhole everything into something that would last. And ironically, it has to this day, which is, I mean, it's funny. I mean, I don't know. I never really. That's why I guess we have these interviews. I've never really thought about it, but it's true.
No, it's brilliant because that model has worked for everybody else. It's like the key that has allowed people to organize their hobbies around your concept, and it's a lot more accessible than, say, Heritage or something like that, because I think you did start with it as a free service, and so it had that idea to begin with. So that's at the heart of it. Is it still you and Chris and Maureen, or has your team gotten bigger? Are there any other changes besides the huge numbers that are going through?
Well, Chris, Chris used to be in the Cleveland area, so he was working with Maureen and I right here in the house when we were putting CAF together and whatnot. And then he moved down to Tennessee, but he worked remotely for me. I think he's actually been gone. I hate to say it, I think it's been 3 years now, but the way and the way I structured it, we didn't have a business to wrap CAF around. And so when I realized that there was this potential to make it into something, I formed a separate company called Collectors Network. And because at this point, at that time, I was already starting to do the artwork or the design work for art dealers. So so all of a sudden we had revenue coming in from designing dealer sites, revenue coming in from comic art fans for premium memberships and advertising. And so I said, all right, I can't keep funneling this all through my other my other LLC. I need to make another business for this. So when I did it, and that would have probably been around 08, I made it where Chris was a partner. I gave him 20% of the business. I'm like, I don't know where we're going with this, Chris.
That is generous.
But I want you to be a part of it for as long as I'm going to be a part of it. And so, it was basically Maureen and I had 40 and 40 and Chris had 20 and but at the time it was, 100% of zero, but we were in it together. And that was kind of our inspiration. And early on, it was a very interesting time. But Chris, it was like 5 years ago. For the longest time, we made the majority of our income, as much as we made from advertising and premium memberships. We made more money from eBay than anybody. I mean, it was. Was it paying
you to put their auctions and their buy it nows on your site? Is that what you mean? They were paying you money?
Well, no, it's an affiliate program essentially, where I send leads to eBay, and people, if they go to eBay and bid on something, then or buy it, I get credit for that. And back in the day, I started working with eBay probably in 2008 as well. If you Google Hurricane Katrina, that's when it started, because when Katrina happened, there was a lot of artists that were donating their works to charity, and the charity was auctioning all the.
Katrina is 2006.
Okay, so then I started working with them then.
I'll look it up.
All right, so at the time, there were so many people sending me press releases that wanted me to promote their auctions, and I couldn't keep up with the demand for to do that. And I said, eBay has got to have some kind of widget.
2005.
Holy
August 2005.
Well, there you go. So in 2005. So maybe see, that's why all my dates are a mess here. I should have wrote this down. But what I did was I found this widget that they had. And I really didn't know much about it. I think it actually said you could make money off this widget, sign up for the eBay Partner Network program, and you'll make some money. And I was like, I didn't even care. I just wanted something I could put on the homepage that listed all the auctions from this one seller that was doing it. And I think that first month that I had it up there, we made like $800. And I was like, what? I think I had tried their partner network before, and I think I made about 10 cents in a month.
Right.
And so I was like, wow. I mean, seems like an easy way to make some revenue, and I needed to find ways to integrate eBay into the site, and so that's why eBay became a very integral part of our marketing.
And you've got some issue now. I don't really understand it, but I forget which it is. Either the buy it nows or the auctions. You're not promoting anymore on your site because they're finagling in some way, right?
Well, I mean, the program just changed a lot. The beauty of it early on, for those of us who were there, was that I owned, like, if you clicked on a link and went over to eBay, anything you did for 7 days after that was attributed to me, unless you clicked on, say, a link off of somebody else's site to overwrite my cookie. So, and it made sense, right? Most of the things were auctions at that time, and why would But eBay about 6 years ago changed the program where they only let you be attributed for that person for 24 hours. And it really made things difficult because, of course, since most of these things are auctions, and as Ruben knows, everybody likes to snipe, it became problematic. So there was a period in time where I was making over 5 figures a month just driving traffic over to eBay when it was a 7-day cookie. And then when they changed it to the 24-hour cookie, it probably cut it, and 2/3 were cut off.
Gotcha.
And so, but you had to get smarter. You had to come up with ways to show auctions that were ending rather than, I always felt like they were stupid because I wanted to show an auction when it started, so that you put it out in front of people, they're going to know about it immediately. And then they're going to put it in their watch list. They're going to throw some early bids on it. Yeah. But eBay was stupid. They were looking at it in the reverse. They only wanted to credit you at the end. And so me as a affiliate, I had to start showing things at the end. Well, that's not going to drive the price up. People are going to miss it. I want to be showing it to them on the first day, not on the last day, because I want 10 guys to know about that one great piece of art, not 2. I know that as collectors, that's exactly the last thing you wanted to hear. But my goal was to sell more and to drive the prices up. And I felt that the eBay's model of limiting the window just was counterintuitive. But the reason they did it, and again, this is when eBay went to hell, was they wanted to compete with Amazon. They didn't want me driving traffic to auctions. They wanted me driving traffic to cameras and golf bags and tennis shoes with buy it nows. With they didn't want me to sell collectibles. They wanted me to sell new products because they wanted their goal, and that was why they were penalizing anybody who focused on auctions and that of course hurt everyone that was in the collectibles market. That was doing what I was doing. But I mean, I couldn't turn it off because it still was producing income. And even probably back then, still more income than I was making from advertising and premium memberships. But it was a negative, and it was a big hit for Chris, Maureen, and I. And so, and the thing with eBay was that they always, I mean, it was like every 2 or 3 years they changed their program director, of the affiliate program, and every time they did that, the new person coming in, you knew their goal was to cut costs. So they would do something else. Either, maybe you were making 70%. I mean, they were crazy. You would make 70% of the fees. So $100 auction closing, 10% of that is the fees. I was making $7 from that, and they were only keeping $3. So that became maybe the next guy flipped it to $5, and then the next guy flipped it to only $3. Of course, I mean, it never made sense to me why they paid me more than them, but that's what they did. And
the problem is that a lot of people aren't really listing their stuff on eBay anymore.
No, not it. No,
so
because
that's also cut down, right?
Well, those were the things. That was when eBay started becoming less relevant for collectibles because they really everything was just their focus was wrong. So as a business model, and it didn't matter. I had worked with them very closely, and they took me out to San Jose. I went there for probably 10 straight years as just like their number one person in collectibles to talk to them about the direction I wanted to see their program go. And it just, they didn't listen to me. They were more focused on the big, even though they always brought me, they were more focused on the other companies like the IGNs or I was trying to think of who the big one is out there now. But at any rate, they didn't really care for what I had to say, but I had to be there. So
Jordan's asking a question which I wanted to ask as well. Jordan's question is, how do you determine which art auctions to highlight on CAF? I always wondered whether you, and I didn't know who else was there, but I guess at the time, Chris and Maureen had certain filters, and you were looking through eBay and then picking the ones that you really liked and putting them up. Was that happening? And if so, that must have taken quite a lot of time. And I do remember once listing something on eBay, hoping you guys would pick it up, and you didn't, and then I canceled it, and then I listed it again, and you did, and that drove my bids way up. So I know that was making a huge difference.
Right. Well,
as a collector, what you're hoping is that you can find something that you don't, because you don't want everybody to know about it as a buyer.
Right. Well, what we did was, for me, I wanted to know there was interest in an auction before I'd feature it. There's lots, because the thing is, you have to think now there's like 85,000 listings in the comic art category on eBay, but back, let's say 10 years ago, there might have been 25,000 listings. So you could never go through them all and figure out which ones you wanted to feature. So using the API that we have access to, I would just pull together a list, and I had to set the criteria, and the criteria was, I didn't look at buy it nows because there's just so many buy it nows, and buy it nows are fishing expeditions, and I can't, as we all know, there's many dealers that used eBay back then, and the majority of them, if you made an inquiry about buying something and buy it now, they would just take the sale off eBay. So why on earth would I focus on driving traffic to buy it nows when I know darn well that most of these guys are going to take the sale off eBay? So if I'm going to be throwing eBay lots up there, I'm not going to be showing buy it nows because it's just wasting space on CAF and not making me any money. So that was the first thing to throw out. So then I only focused on auctions, and then what I did there was my filter required there to be one bid on an auction, and that the price of the auction be at a certain dollar amount. And it was very low, but you'd be surprised to see that if you go into the original comic art category and just say, show me everything that has one bid and is over $30. The list is pretty small. It's only about 400 or 500 pieces, if that. And so that's actually how we do it. I mean, today I have, in the old day, it was a bit manual, and I felt it was worth it because we were making a lot of money. But now it's something that takes me about 2 minutes a day. I literally.
You weren't really using aesthetic criteria. You weren't saying, I like this piece, so I'm going to put it on the site. You were just looking at metrics and saying.
I was looking at metrics, but I was also looking at the images. I mean, I kick nudes out of there as much as I can. Production art, things that I can't. I'm doing a visual, but I mean, I could show you, but it would just be silly. But at any rate, I just basically get a text file, paste it in a form, click submit. I see the 300 auctions in front of me, and I have a checkbox on any one that I want to kick out. And so I just visually scroll through the list. I know what to look for. I can pick a piece of production art out as the smallest thumbnail ever, and then I kick all the things out that I don't want, and then I bring it in. But there is one thing though. I can then go in and see what I have imported, because it automatically kicks things out when the auction ends, because we have the expiration date as part of it. I have this featured concept, and I go in there once a day and I pick the top, anything that's over $200, let's say. And those are the auctions that get at the top of the right-hand column. There's always only one. Those are curated by me, because I know that I want to be able to show you the ones that, because anything there, you figure it's already got a bid at least, and it's over $200. That means it's got a lot of interest. And so what you see at the top of the right-hand column is coming from picks that I've specifically selected. But the stuff that's at the top, the stuff that's at the bottom, those are, I mean, they're my selections, but they're actually kind of geared towards the ending time. I actually try to only show items that are ending in the next 48 hours, because I'm trying to send you over there so you can place a bid on something and hopefully not overwrite my cookies so that I can still make some money. I mean, it's still, it is a lot of, but at the end of the day now, it's just a 2-minute job every day. So, I do that, and, if I'm lucky, I make a couple $100 in a day from that. And that doesn't happen all the time, but I mean, anybody would be very happy to even make $100 for 5 minutes of work every day. And that's but that's because it's CAF's traffic. CAF has so much traffic and it's focused traffic that, they're looking at it and they know that I'm not showing garbage and production art in those spaces. So people look to those. So that's how that works. But again, where that was leading was eBay always cutting their rates. It got us to a point about 5 years ago where Chris and I were looking at each other, and our salary, our annual salary was not going up, and it was always in jeopardy. My salary was always going down. I would always be trimming it off of me because I couldn't pay Chris less. I mean, I was paying him. I already felt like I wasn't paying him enough, but we were we're happy when what we were doing. I mean, because this is our passion, and so every time there was a pay cut, it came out of Maureen and I. And it got to the point where I said, I went to Chris, I'm like, the next pay cut, one of us is going to have to go. And I'm thinking it's me. I'm like, it's got to be me, because we can't function without Chris, because Chris manages the servers. Chris does a lot of the design work. Chris was getting good at SQL programming. And, so he was my everything. I mean, CAF could function without me because nobody knew me. I always was the guy behind the scenes. I mean, everybody, they knew me, but I was never, I'm not what I am today to the hobby. And so I told Chris, I'm like, I'm going to start looking for work, as soon as I feel like we're going to get close to that next regime change at eBay. And because we really just weren't growing the other areas. Premium memberships weren't growing, and the advertising really wasn't growing. And you figure this is between 08, so we had gone through a bit of a recession. But what we ended up doing was, as fate would have it, Chris called me one day and he's like, I got referred to this company and they made me a great offer I can't refuse, and I'm going to take it. So I was in shock.
You and Maureen now?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, technically, it's just Maureen and I. I mean, now that my son I brought my son on, he's going to help me with a lot of the video work and the stuff that we're doing on Comic Art Live.
As an adopted person, you want to adopt another person?
I'm not quite ready for that. Not quite ready for that. But yeah, so it was a very difficult time when Chris left, because again, that was a little over 3 years ago, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I really I didn't want to run all this myself because it's a very large burden. You know, you can, as you might imagine. I mean, I host 30 art dealer sites and CAF. If I have a server problem, you know, half of the comic art world or more is having a bad day. I mean,
Yeah.
think of all the people crying about the CGC forums this last couple of days, watching that thing be down. I don't know what's wrong with it, but you know, it's tough. You know, and so it's a very large burden to have that. And at the time when I lost Chris, it was it was rough. I mean, I was looking at getting, I was like, I'm just going to have to get a job and get out of this and somehow and just coast with comic art fans because it's doing very well without me anyway. I mean, nobody knows me. They don't.
I hope he's watching right now or will watch this in the future and will feel appropriately bad and guilty. So,
well, no, but it's, you know, as everybody knows, you know, I always approach CAF as a free, you know, I wanted it to be free. I wanted it to be, that's just the way, that was my view of it today. It's the way I looked at it all along. But yeah, it was a very difficult time. But again, because I'm not this Bill Cox. I was the other one. I was the mechanic behind the scenes that nobody really knew very well. I mean, I had relationships with a lot of the dealers and sure, a lot of collectors too. But, you know, I wasn't, I felt like everybody could do without me. They didn't need me around. And CAF I could go and work a 9-to-5 job and come home and spend a couple hours answering customer support emails, and CAF could get along just fine.
You were like Schwarzenegger in Total Recall. You know, he's Hauser, and then he's like the other guy who's like completely opposite. But do you feel like taking a bit of a visual break and maybe sharing some of your CAF gallery? Because I've always wondered whether a person's CAF gallery or just their collection kind of represents who they are, like their soul to some extent. I don't know if you'd agree, having seen many galleries, and maybe would this reflect your own? Because I hadn't seen yours before preparing for this interview, and I was expecting, and maybe other people might expect it to be like this phenomenal, like you got in on the ground floor early and then you picked up all these like key pieces of art, but it's not. It reflects a very down-to-earth guy with like odd eclectic pieces here and there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind showing a few pieces, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not that. I'm at a point now that I'm older. I have a very different appreciation for the creators that are, you know, that are out there, and my goal today really is different. I'm trying to get good representative examples from every creator that I feel, you know, touched me in some way or that was important to me, or that, you know, even artists that I'm not like a huge fan of. I'm like, I want to have a nice example of from each of them. But you know, growing, you know, when I was starting collecting, I was really just picking up things that either were, again, you know, I guess important to me, or the reason I wanted it was.
Nick just said Bill is down to earth and a man of the people. It's why CAF works so well. I totally agree, Nick. I think that's what I'm feeling as well.
Well, thank you, Nick. Nick gave a nice big super chat to me again. Nick, thank you so much. Nick is a huge supporter of everything that I've been doing since we got on here, and even before that. But yeah, well, I can share. But yeah, so I'm not. So early on, I was collecting things that I liked, and artwork and artists that I kind of, you know, really enjoyed their work growing up. Yeah, here I can share a little bit of that. I look at my collection. There's nothing special in my collections. It's not.
Well, I don't see
it
that you have galleries devoted to your family, and not just one gallery for your family that's like a side gallery, but they're sort of a significant part. Your son's has the most, and so I was kind of interested in the Powerpuff stuff because, you know, you traditionally think of that as a girl thing, but I don't know, maybe your son was really into that, or maybe you were into it for him and you bought it for him. Like, how do the galleries for your family work? Are these like gifts you're buying for your family, or something?
You know, well, the thing is that growing up, like I mentioned, my mom was very instrumental in me wanting to become an artist. And so I was taking art classes when I was probably in the 3rd grade, and always very encouraging of me. And so I just wanted to make sure that my kids had the same sort of exposure, you know, to just creative things. And so, you know, Powerpuff Girls was a fun cartoon back in the day. And
Sure. By the
You
way,
know,
the artist is Phil Moy. Is that Albert's brother or something?
no. He Phil's he did a lot of this kind of comic related work from TV back in the
Okay.
day, and yeah, Phil was one of my. I mean, I saw him at San Diego, and he had, I believe, like 6 or 8 Powerpuff Girl covers. So I just went in and I think I bought 3 of them. I mean,
Okay.
that one's hanging on my wall right there. I mean, so they're not all in my kids' rooms, although they probably should be. But I mean, I just kind of started picking up different stuff. He was big into Power Rangers, so this was Greg Espinosa thing that had Power Rangers on it. So that's all. I was trying to find things that I knew were important to them, or
Right.
to, in this case, to him at that point in time in his life, and then just find artwork that would, would make everybody happy. I mean, and it made me happy.
Jeffrey Boy just said, "That's my bro."
That's,
Yeah, I don't know if he means that as a joke or if he really is his brother.
I'm not sure. It may be. But yeah, so that's all. That was kind of the inspiration. I mean, my one daughter was really into My Little Pony, so I
Sure.
picked up several pony artworks,
That's
and
probably going up with all the bronies out there. It's
I know exactly. So that was all. So I wasn't always buying for myself. I just always felt that
right.
Art is something to be shared, and the more people you can involve in it, especially your family, and and again, we're all. My son is in graphic design. My daughter Gwen is definitely going to be doing something. She's very 3-dimensional, and she's probably going to be doing work in gaming. She's going to be going to Full Sail next year down in Orlando. And my other daughter is an incredible animator, and at 16, she's just phenomenal. And so I look at it, and it's all because of the opportunities that and I think the time that we've been able to be with the kids. My daughters have been homeschooled for the last 8 years, so just having them around and having them see Maureen and I working every day and being able to kind of participate and just see them in their online classes that they've done, and I just think it was a good experience for us all to be together. And it goes all the way, it goes way back to when my son was first born. Just that, whatever it was, I just said, I want to be there. I want to be able to experience life, with him and see where that takes us. And so I took him to San Diego early on, and he went back a few times, and it was.
Bill, do you know that I teach?
No, I didn't. I don't know anything about you.
Yeah, that's okay. Nobody really does or cares, but. That's how I make most of my money, not from creative stuff. So I'm always interested when people homeschool their kids, and it seems like you're homeschooling them with online stuff, but there's a wide range of the way people homeschool their stuff. So I just want to say, like, as a teacher, I'm really interested in people's philosophies, and the choices they make.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that was really. I mean, there were probably other reasons too. But the main ones were we felt that we found a very good online school, where they it wasn't like a K-12 program where it was super hands-on with the parents. They were being educated by people on screen. They were in classrooms with other students. Although the students couldn't directly interact with each other, they could directly interact with the teacher. So we liked that, and we like the curriculums, and so. We just kind of followed our gut on that, and knew that we would be there. Both of us would be there in case there was anything that we felt we needed to be on top of with them. So,
Sure.
But my favorite horror movie was The Evil Dead, and that's why my son's name is Ash, because I love Bruce Campbell's character. So you can see I've got a Paulo Rivera Ash painting there. So, we've kind of, and my one daughter is Gwen from Gwen Stacy. The other one's Emma for Emma Frost. And so we've always, we kind of kept the names fun with the kids and comic related. And so again, I have a very lighthearted approach, to the hobby.
Yeah. Like, one thing I tried to do when I started collecting art was just only to buy one thing that was representative of one thing I liked, because I just felt like I couldn't afford multiples. But I think at least from a cursory glance at your gallery, you do have like batches of things. Like, for example, you have a gallery devoted to military. And I thought,
Mhm.
wow, is he like a real military nut? But no, you just literally have two batches in there by two artists. And so I find that kind of interesting. It's almost like what you buy is almost a bit random. And then if the opportunity is there, you buy a bunch of it.
That's true. I mean, I made many impulse buys. I always liked. I mean, as a kid, I built models, right? So when I
Yeah.
saw some of those images of the airplanes and that sort of thing, I don't know, I liked it. So I think that might have been the only time I bought it. I bought like I think that was a heritage auction 15 years ago, and I just picked all those pieces up because I thought they were cool. They reminded me of something that I enjoyed, and so I bought them. You know, so no, not a military, not at all. I mean, I've had relatives in the service, but for me, no. I could never do it with my bow legs. I don't think they'd put me anywhere but behind a desk. So.
Well, did have you, on the tech, like plotting the courses of the missiles and stuff like that. eBay headquarters.
Right.
Do you want to talk about the Vicente Alazar? Because that's not somebody I really know anything about, and I found your pages beautiful that you've bought from him.
Yeah, those I've picked up in different places. I know I picked a couple of these up from Dave Carlin, and I think I might have picked one up on eBay, maybe. But they're from Space 1999, one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid, and always was kind of a scary sci-fi show, I felt. And again, it's back to, it's my appreciation for things that were from that time period, which is why I picked those up. I mean, and the pieces are nice. I mean, they're not your standard pen or ink, as
They
everybody's.
remind me of British art. British art is
definitely
like that.
Definitely. And so no, I just love these pieces, and this one I get asked about all the time, because it's just such a nice example of from the book. And I mean, everybody loves the spaceship. I used to, as a kid, I'd gone out with a Super 8 camera in hand and some firecrackers, and I built this spaceship right here. Like the end of it was one of the erasers you put on a pencil. It's the perfect shape for it, right? And I built that model, and I filmed my own Super 8 Space 1999 adventure probably at the age of 10, and had fireworks blowing up in the sandbox, and I had stuff, the spaceship kind of crash landing on a piece of fishing line, and again, that's all, that's kind of the environment I grew up in. And I guess that's probably why all these things excite me today that we've been doing on, with Comic Art Live. It's all filming and production, and it's creative. It's all the things that, I mean, it's all the kind of fun things I grew up with, and it's all nuts and bolts and hands-on. And I feel like what we've been able to do with the channel and with the fun things we've been doing with Dueling Dealers with Mike and Anthony, it's just such a joy to be able to be creative again. CAF has been fun, and I get to participate with artists and see great stuff all the time. But there was a very long period of time where I didn't feel like I was really doing much creative. I mean, the mini golf, when I built that, was a fun way to kind of get something out in my community that was creative and an experience. You're bringing families together, and and doing things that most other businesses can't do locally for their communities. I probably give away 800 rounds of golf to charity every single year. And no restaurant can give away 800 dinners or lunches or even a small French fry, right? Well, maybe McDonald's can, but the point is that for me, that the mini golf was like this moment in my life where I was able to do something that was really fun and engaging and got me to be
family oriented, which is
completely family oriented, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my kids were there when we built it, and it was a big sculpture project for me, and that was really when I got more. I mean, I say the personality I have today really came out of being like the owner of the mini golf, because I got to be in front of 100 people that I never knew every single day, and I was able to break out of my shell, right? I'm an MC for every day I'm there. These people don't know me. I can be anybody that I want to be in front of them, and I just learned how to be very outgoing, by hanging
Yeah.
out and doing that. And so, but yeah, we're at a point in time where we're kind of thinking about transitioning out of there. But that's so Comic Art Live has kind of come around just at the right time for me, and it came at the right time. Like as we were talking earlier, I mean, I'm going to hide the screen for at least for now, but it came about at a time when I was really I was at that point where I was trying to find something. I was still looking for work. I literally had put in applications in November, December of 2019 that I was still pretty confident that I was going to get out of doing CAF as my full-time job, because I was just waiting, because literally eBay would always make their changes around February of every year. And we were at the cycle point when it was time for them to do that in 2020. And I put some feelers out and had gone to a couple interviews, and I was ready. I was just like, this is it. Where am I going to go from here? And so, and again, you start thinking, my son was in his second year in college, and I'm just starting to think about all those things, and paying health insurance and all that. And then, as fate would have it, nobody hired me in the first couple interviews I went to, probably because they looked at it and said, "Oh my God, this guy owns a miniature golf course, and I have to talk about CAF." And they're like, "And he wants to keep owning this business, but he wants to come work for me? What is this guy, an idiot? He'll never give me 110% or 150%." So that, fortunately, people looked at me and just probably said, "Yeah, I'd hire him if he didn't have all these other things. So we're just going to pass on him." And then COVID hit, and then everything changed. Everything changed after that. I mean, I knew immediately that the dealers were going to have challenges, and they're all my clients. I have 30-ish dealers whose sites I've hosted and who I've been close with for years, and everybody was on the phone with me in the first couple of weeks, just trying to figure things out. The collectors were asking me about stuff, and so the vision for the show kind of came out of just me trying to think.
Show that just went by. Is it the third one that you've done?
It's the third one, right? So the first one was May at the end of May of 2020. So this would have been in February. We were already thinking about it. Dan Poddick is a collector. He's on CAF. He came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to miss out on a comic art con, in the month of March. You want to put something together?" And I said, "Well, I'm already working on this other thing. I don't want to talk about, because I don't know if I'm going to see it through to fruition, but I'll put together this small concept show for you, and we'll see what happens." And so we put together something, and we did. We called it I don't even remember what, CAFCon or something like that, and we hosted it, and it was, I think it was only one day, and only about 20 collectors put art in it, and everybody loved it. We barely let anybody know about it, but it worked really well. Guys sold, and so that was kind of knowing that worked was.
But that wasn't the first Comic Art Live. That was like a pre-Comic Art Live.
That was a pre-Comic Art Live, but we were already working.
Zero.
Right. So we were already working on the programming that was going to become Comic Art Live, but we did this small event just to appease everybody, because it was mid-March, or maybe it was even the end of March. So we honestly, and I know this is the absolute truth, we were the first ones to do an online comic convention of any kind by doing that. And because there were other people talking about doing it, not the big ones, but smaller ones. But we did the first one doing that, and I knew it was going to be great. I had people email me afterwards that the 20 guys that did it, everybody sold something or came close to selling something, or they sold something in their classifieds because it brought people in there. And the thing is, CAF is a con every day, so it's not. I'm not like I'm not a genius for doing that. It's just CAF is a marketplace every day. That's why it's galleries and marketplace. So all I had to do was focus everybody's attention on one thing for one day, and it worked. But we were out there, because the next biggest show that anybody tried to do, it was a group that I'm really close with now. They had a show called the Mainframe Comic Con that happened in the beginning of April, and I watched the show that they did, and they were all panels, whereas our show was all exhibitor hall. And I saw what tools they used. They used StreamYard, the same thing we're using here today for this interview. And I got in touch with them and talked to them a little bit. And so just picking their brain gave me some ideas on how I was going to make the May 2020 show be really great. And the big thing there was introducing panels to be a part of the show.
Yeah.
And that was a scary thing, because it was scary, but I was thinking it would, all right, I'm going to have fun, but I'm going to try to just pull some people together that I'm used to hanging out with when I'm at shows. And that's how I came up with getting Mike Berkey, Glenn Brunswick, and Will Gabrielle together. The three of them have been friends for a while, and I've seen them interact, and I knew it would be easy for me to kind of sit down with the three of them and talk about the hobby. And so mid-May of last year, we did our first show, just for me really to get my feet wet, to understand how to use the platform we're in today. And we did one of those shows, and then that weekend was the first Comic Art Live, and we had, I think we had 10 panels with different artists. I got every dealer that I worked with to provide somebody. And, here I worked with the Hero Initiative. I said, hey, I want to get you guys in here too. How can you help me? So they got me. So Joe Quesada was in a panel for an hour. It was, it was far more than what I was hoping for, but it was all live, nothing recorded. Everybody else that's come after us, that, whether it's San Diego or New York or, Wizard does do live events, but the majority of the stuff has always been kind of pre-canned, and everything that we did was off the cuff and live. On
your report, you said you had 26,000 visitors over the weekend, which was higher than November. I tried to find stats online for San Diego's virtual con last year, but I couldn't. According to Wikipedia, back in 2015, their actual live con, in-person con, had 167,000. But I was able to find stats for TCAF, which is in my town of Toronto. Different kind of thing, but it's a huge festival for alternative and literary comics. And according to their site, it's 25,000 this past spring. So you beat them with a very niche product.
Right. Well, that's just it. Yeah. When you talk about the attendees going to San Diego, how many of them are comic art fans? They're not even 3,000. So if I can organize 26,000 art fans to come to my site for a weekend, it's substantial, and it's kind of, it's grown every time, but only marginally. I think I've said it maybe it grows by like 5%, but because the hobby isn't as big as we'd like it to be yet, but it's it is growing, that's for sure.
We can really get stuck in the weeds of the numbers. I wrote down all the numbers from that market report, but I'm sure everybody's read it. And at a certain point, numbers are so huge, things like 572,000 page views, or, a total of, 4.7 million sold by premium members. At a certain point, that just becomes too much for the mind to kind of. So a lot of people have been posting joking comments about when's Bill going to sell stuff, or when, can you give advice to people as to, because I think eventually we want to talk about some of the things around the hobby that we always discuss on the Facebook group.
I'm sorry, I'm finally reading some comments here. Marcus Way lost his balls at the mini golf. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, I wasn't reading the comments.
But before we get there, by the way, do you need a pee break? Because
I'm good, but if you need to take a break, feel free. Don't use your jar there. Go.
I think I'm going to die of septicemia from this.
See, I've been doing these for too long. I can sit here for another 4 hours and I get up. But,
and if people don't know, Bill just came off another live panel just before doing this, so he's marathon man tonight. Okay,
I am.
I guess everybody's kind of wondering, it seems to be inbuilt into the hobby. How can I get something I want at cheaper than the going rate? Do you have any tips for people at one of these live shows?
Gosh, not really. Other than the one thing that I don't do, but everybody else does, is negotiate. Right? That's almost anybody.
You mean like when you walk up to an artist and you see something you like, you either go, "I can buy it" or not, and then you buy it?
Well, with artists, I would never. If an artist had,
sorry, an artist, or
right, right, an artist, I would, always would pay whatever they're asking, or I would buy it. But with dealers or other collectors, it's just expected anymore. Collectors want to get top dollar for their artworks too, and they always have. So the thing is, anybody who's coming into the hobby just has to always remember that most people selling artwork, aside from artists, I would never ever even suggest in negotiating with an artist unless there's a good reason for it. But I think that
I'm guilty of having done that, but it's usually when I buy like three things. I'm like,
right.
if I buy three things, can you give me a bit of a break? And
Right.
usually they're pretty nice about it.
Well, yeah, a lot of times they'll just do.
As I would if I was selling three things to one person.
Correct. All right. That's a good example of where you could ask for a break on something. But with a dealer or a collector, I mean, everybody out there knows it's like the first thing you say when you like something is, well, what's your best price? And usually if the other guy isn't really willing to get rid of it, he'll say, well, what are you willing to pay me? So, that's the only way. There's no secret. I mean, there's so many guys out. It's amazing, having done these chats and learning so much from other collectors and dealers about the ways that they find art. I mean, there's so many guys out there that troll Craigslist, that troll every classified venue that is out there to find things that families are selling that don't know what they have. I mean, if you want to be a bloodhound for the comic art world, you could, there are many guys that are like that, and you have to be if you want to find the stuff that may be off the radar and is affordable. But by and large, most of us aren't going to do that. I don't do it.
Well, also, I think times have changed. I remember, like, when I was a kid in the 80s, there would always be like these stories of so and so found these Silver Age comics at a garage sale and whatever. But people heard of those stories in popular culture, and so those opportunities became a lot more rarer. And we're there with Comic Book Art, or we're almost there, where people kind of know it's out there and it's expensive, and so people aren't necessarily going to do that. But I think some people will blunder into making those mistakes, and the people who have the feelers out, who tend to be dealers or who tend to be people who are immersed there, will do it. But also, besides the time, it's a lot of psychic real estate, if that's the way you're going about it. If the thrill is, oh, I got a bargain, or I kind of bamboozled somebody, or I've kind of done that. If that kind of takes over, that's something I was going to talk about later, about the psychology, where that kind of takes over from the primary pleasure of getting the art from an artist you really respect or something like that, then it really kind of takes over a lot of your persona, a lot of your soul. And
right. Well, there's definitely different degrees of collectors out there. Some are more, there's, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really have a good way to say it. Some people are very
patient.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. I see Mikhail, that Mikhail had once said, like we were talking about how you find things. I mean, he sets up Google keywords. I believe it was Mikhail who once told me that, and I do the exact same thing, but I do it for news. I don't have it where I'm looking to find things related to comic art buying. I've got keywords set up so I get daily alerts from Google's network, letting me know about news I might want to share on CAF. But there's just many avenues to trying to find artwork these days at a good price, and it's harder than ever today.
For me, I've kind of taken it the other way. I've been wanting to try to get off of that because I find it takes too much. It just takes too much out of me, and it's not fun anymore. It becomes
right. That's why I don't do it.
Yeah. So for me, it's like the spiraling prices have given me an incentive to say, you know what? I don't really need that Frank Miller page from like his first Daredevil run or whatever. I'm okay with this piece of production art for $100 or $200 or something like that. And also, I have some creative solutions that I'm always kind of, trying to. So if you want, I could tell you. If you want, I could tell you my story from doing the show, because I should tell the other listeners that I don't know when I first discovered CAF. Let's say it was around 2010 when I was starting to kind of get into comic book art. I was mostly just looking on eBay, and that was still like a good time to look for stuff on eBay. But I just used CAF as a way to like say, oh, look, there's that cool piece of art, or look, there's somebody who owns it, and could I maybe approach them about selling it to me? But I never ever put any of my stuff on CAF because I don't think I'm a typical collector. I'm not the kind of person I love having a friend over who's into comics, and then we'll look through a portfolio, and then, you can look at the thing and go, oh, look, they've corrected something or whatever. But until preparing for this interview and you getting me to participate in the show, which thank you for letting me do that because that was an interesting experience, I never actually interacted with CAF in any particular way. So do you want me to talk about that for a couple of minutes if you've got...
No, feel free. This is your show too.
Do you have those images handy that I sent you?
Yes, okay. I do.
So this is kind of my feedback, if it's of any use. Okay, first of all, I had no idea how to set stuff up because you have to go to a menu and you have to. So, like, I think having like one big button that says like set up for comic book art live here would really help. I contacted a friend of mine who might be listening, Bob Cotman. He's also in Toronto. Shout out to Bob. And Bob had done it before, but he couldn't remember how to do it. But then both of us somehow found it on the menu. And then I was thinking of listing like 3 things because I wasn't really planning to sell something. But then I noticed like you had like 24 slots for each day or something like that. And I was like, that's not right. That's like me renting a booth at a con and only bringing 3 books to put on, like 3 copies. So I ended up putting, I think it was 10 things up, and I was expecting the John Byrne stuff. Like I set the prices a bit high because I thought people were going to negotiate. Hey, there's Bob. Thanks for the shout out.
Out there.
Awesome, Bob. So I thought people were going to negotiate me down, but what ended up happening was the only piece I sold was not something I expected to sell, which is really weird. It was a cover to a Fool Killer comic, which I only own because it kind of took me back to high school, 1991. It's really not a comic people know. And, when I bought it off Dan Green, actually, I got it as part of a complex trade. Dan was an interesting character, to say the least. And he had all these like piles of art from like obscure periods in his thing. I had kind of like jokey descriptions, for the stuff other than the burn. So this was my description for this. Did you grow tired of the Punisher as your teenage hormones whittled away, leaving you high and dry on the island of adulthood? Me too. But how about a similar vigilante who just kills fools? Sign me up, I say. A bona fide early 90s Marvel cover with the trade dress and everything. Don't be foolish and eat your vegetables. So I had like really jokey descriptions, and I was really surprised because this guy contacted me, and he's an interesting guy. He sells fossils, like dinosaur things for like a lot of money, but he's kind of getting into comic book art, and he just loves anything to do with vigilantes. So he asked me, do you have any other Fool Killer stuff? And I was like, no, goddamn, I wish I'd bought more from Dan Green. So I sold this, and one of the kind of like the solutions I've kind of found, and most people won't agree with this, but I have a friend, Mike Shea, who I've got to give a shout out to as well. He lives in Virginia, and he puts out a comic book called Miskatonic High, which is an H.P. Lovecraft thing. But anyway, he and I really love Alan Moore, and he has an Alan Moore page that he's not so keen on anymore, but he bought a long time ago. And I'd been kind of bugging him about it for various reasons, and he'd been mulling it over. And then he said, well, do you want to like co-own it with me? And I said, it's funny you're saying that, because I was like thinking along those lines too. Like, people share cottages, people have timeshares. Why not an art share, right? I mean, like, those are also physical commodities that people find a solution to. And then Mike was like thinking about it, and he was like, maybe we should just buy something new. And then I started searching, and Jim Warden, who was actually the dealer who sold me my first ever piece of comic book art back in the mid-90s, he had these pages from Marvel Man called Miracle Man in the US by Alan Moore. And he had them on consignment, and he sold one, and I was like, damn, we missed it. Mike was a bit fussy. He wanted to find the right one, but then Jim was going to like he had 3 other Alan Moore pages, and he put one out on the Saturday, but the other 2 he wasn't going to release until the Sunday, right? And for some reason, he wouldn't tell us the price. He wouldn't show us the image. Jim's kind of not really dealing so much anymore. He's kind of a bit funny that way, but a good guy. So it's like, Mike, we're going to be there at 11 o'clock on Sunday. And then Mike was kind of, he just got his second vaccination. He's like, where are they? I'm like, dude, they're right there. These are the 2 pages from Marvel Man. Can we get this one, please? And it's kind of funny because I'd kind of been talking before, and I was saying the most I want to pay together is 3,000. And so this one page, you can put up the image if you like, was 3,000. And he was kind of looking at the other one, which was 3,500. But I said, let's go for this one. And I think my instinct was right. The reason why Mike's put a Judgment Day comic against it, so you can see how big it is, because it's British art. Because this one is sort of in the between Arc 1 and Arc 2 of Marvel Man. And it's not like the most attractive. It's not as attractive as the other page. But it's got the first actual page with Cream. And Mike was like, I don't know, maybe Cream will get canceled because he's a black character, and he's got blue sapphires for teeth. But I find Cream a really interesting guy, and the actual text is really interesting because it shows Cream deductively reasoning who Marvel Man's secret identity is, and he talks about him being superhuman. So there's all this like Alan Moore, like historical important key stuff in there. And so we ended up buying it, and we co-own this page. Mike wants to like do paperwork for it and stuff, to show like legal ownership that we both own it, and then to like think about acts of God and things like that. But I think it's just, if you trust someone, and more importantly than trusting somebody, if you know that you can have a discussion and you can work through stuff, which Mike and I can do, I trust that more than anything. And to me, I'm as satisfied as if I own that page solo. Like, to me, these are like historical artifacts, and that's why I'm interested in them. There's a little bit of Indiana Jones in me. Like, these are mystical objects, although the mysticism is what we're often, projecting onto them. And I think one way you can look at them is that sort of you have a life, and you're trying to accumulate as much of these things as possible because they reflect, sentimental things and whatever. But another way you can look at them is that they have lives, and you're sort of a small chapter in their lives, because they will outlast you unless, flood or fire or one of those acts of God. They will outlast you. And so I think that's really interesting, that I'm part of this journey of something created by my favorite creator, who's actually owned it, but whatever. So basically what I ended up doing was I ended up taking the money from the Fool Killer thing and putting it towards this. And that was really good because it stayed as US dollars. And so I don't change it from US to Canadian and back. PayPal takes a lot when they do that. So if I don't do that, it's almost like saying it's not real money. It's not money that should be going to my mortgage. So that was kind of my experience with that.
Well, that's I've heard of other pairs of collectors that do similar things, as far as sharing an artwork. So not
people are doing it.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's happened. I mean, I forget who I was speaking with. I mean, it's almost been a year ago. It feels like the interview, but no, I know of 3 or 4 other pairs of collectors that are mutually owned.
Thanks, Nick,
a piece of artwork.
Nick says, "Smart man doing that. I think you traded up."
You traded up.
I traded.
That's true.
I had to put some money on top of what I made, but it was quite affordable, and I traded up for half of it. But it feels like it feels satisfying, like I patched a hole.
Right.
But so here's my suggestion to you. I have a few other suggestions too, but your site could become a locus for these ways to get around the problem of everything becoming like a commodity and being so expensive, where only bankers and people who are in the top tier can go for them. And one is, you could set up a kind of a way. You'd have to make sure you don't take responsibility for it, right? Because that's the problem. But you can set up a way for people to form these networks. Like I heard a story about like people were trying to get art from an artist in Europe, and his rep wasn't responding to them. So they just got together like as a group of 5 people, and then they reached out to the artist and said, if you sell us a batch of pages, will you just sell it to us directly? And so that's how they circumvented that problem. They formed a little collective that does this. Another thing is, like, I love trading, but it's very difficult to trade now because things are worth so much. So how can you trust the other person to, well, this is where you could hire somebody to be sort of the middle person or the broker to do that, because people will trust you, right? I think you've proven that you're not going to be out to screw them, or people might have. I think the problem with this hobby is there's a natural kind of distrust because it's so capitalistic that everybody's out to outmaneuver people, and that can be a good feeling when you're successful, but you're constantly on edge because of that. Well, you could be like an oasis that people come through, like Bedouins, and trade.
Now I've always felt that the hobby needs an escrow service somewhere, sometime that can be trusted. So that would help in trades, that would help in certain cash transactions when you don't know the other person, so that that. Because we've had happen numerous times. People send a piece of art, they say it's original and it's not. And it would be so good to have somebody in between getting the money and getting the art, verifying the art is real and what they say it is, and verifying the money, and then changing hands. The only problem there is, and I agree. Who wouldn't be probably the right person to be that there? But for me, I've always felt that there's a liability and having to handle all that, and it would be. I guess it would be great if somebody came up with something like that I trusted and could put my name behind it and say, yes, I can work with these people, and give you my that I feel these would be the right group to work with because I feel they're sincere. Because somewhere I'm just surprised it hasn't happened yet, because I felt the need for it for the last 15 years. And of course, I always think, wow, that would be something that we should probably be doing.
This is my best solution I came up with. Say you and I want to trade something that we value at $1,000 each. That's enough that's significant, right? So instead of trading it, what we do is we buy each other's piece through PayPal goods and services. So what we're paying is the PayPal thing. And if one of us is not honorable, the other person can then follow up with PayPal. It's not foolproof, because what if PayPal doesn't? But that's one way you could do it, because that's a fairly affordable fee, right? It's 3% and whatever.
Sure.
But you want somebody who you can trust more than PayPal, some arbitrary thing on the other side of the computer. You want somebody who's like a comics person, and if you could
I agree. Like I say, that's why I've been surprised that no one has tried it yet. And I don't know of anybody who's even, because you think they would probably come to me and to ask me questions about it or want me to be on board, but I've never heard of anything like it. And I would just be very hesitant to do it myself, because already there's so many other things I'm doing. Right. How would I add that aspect to my business to receive goods and ensure that if I have a home fire or burglary, that nothing, just the idea, CGC, when you go into their facilities down in Tampa, it's like going into a military complex. That's so because they hold these valuable things, and I can't see anybody at my level, at my playing field level, being able to do that responsibly because of the value of what's being passed through. So it needs to be. It has to happen sometime. It just simply has to. I don't know who or how it's going to happen, but I've just been surprised, because I've seen the need, being where I'm at in the hobby and having to deal with dealers and collectors and hearing all the bad stories that go on, collector to collector deals, or collector to, the dealer deals that have gone south, and just all the negative things that have happened. It's the most obvious solution to the problem, yet nobody has come into here in all this time to try to offer it. And
okay. But I'll throw one idea out there, and then I'll stop maybe my crack.
Oh, and all right, and just I am, that's an actual lie, because NSN. Thank you, Michael. He did try, and he said it was too cumbersome, and I always felt that. I think that when Michael and I talked about that, gosh, that was probably 8 or 9 years ago. I mean, it's no, I completely, again, and like he's saying, even on the commission side of things, for like having an arbiter between a commissioner and the artist, someone who can, who can hold the money as an escrow, saying, "Yeah, artist, I've got the money, but you've got to deliver the product. When you deliver the product,
It's another problem. Artists who don't deliver,
Right. No, but again, that's back to a escrow service of some kind. Really is,
Yeah.
It needs to be out there, but it needs to be. But the thing is, our hobby is more the Wild West, right? We're so used to collector transactions, artist to collector transactions, and so many people don't want to pay any extra money for an escrow service. They'd rather run the risk of losing their $2,500 to a collector they've never heard of in Kansas City than potentially spend 10% fee to guarantee that what they're buying from this person in Kansas City is actually selling you a piece of original art. But by God, they will come back to me and yell at me if they did it through CAF. That's my fault that they did it. But but worry about finding and figuring out the right way to do it. That's no, that's not on their radar. But again, that's because the way most people would rather treat things as they're willing to run the risk, because why? They'd rather have that extra 250 in their pocket for the next buy than to actually do it in a safe and secure way. And I get it. I pretty much am the same way. But that is both the pro and the con of the way we approach buying and selling artwork in the hobby today.
I think part of the problem, the reason why it's so fraught with anxiety, is because it is so much about money now. It is such a capitalistic world, right? It's no longer like, it's kind of like cons. Do you remember going to cons and they were like small, nice things with a few creators you got comic books signed by in the 90s? And now they're like these massive things that are a lot of fun, but they're also a big headache, and they're, extremely expensive to get to and to get in and then get into the events. And like right now, 90s stuff, is getting a lot of attention. It's on fire. McFarlane, Lee, Liefeld, etc. That whole thing. But when the millennials come along, are they going to prop up the market? That's what I think we're all kind of waiting to see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with everything the millennials do, but one thing that I find really interesting about them is that they say, I'm not going to put up with this, the way things are, and just waiting in line. I'm going to, like Jack Nicholson in 5 Easy Pieces at the diner, I'm going to sweep everything off the table. And I'm wondering if like millennials will do something with either comics in general, because comics, classic comics have become very expensive, or comic art specifically. And I wonder if a disruption, I don't know a lot about finance, but from what I understand, the reason cryptocurrency and Bitcoin came about is because, one time the US dollar was tied to the gold standard. It no longer is. It's just arbitrary floating out there. And banks are making a lot of money from transactions. And so people wanted to find something that was a bit more, fair, universal, transparent. So they came up with blockchain, and I'm not a fan of the environmental toll, but could there be something that disrupts comic art collecting that allows the traffic to flow again for people like you and me, as opposed to the bankers and the people at the top?
I can't see anything, to be honest with you. I think no. I don't know. I don't see how we can divert from the path that we're on right now. At least at this point, I don't think where we were at 20 years ago in the hobby just is never going to come back. It just
I agree. You can't look back. You can't.
That
Although
was fun.
Much of this hobby is about looking back and saying, "I want
right,
that."
Right. Oh yeah, but the way we conducted commerce and the competition we had for the same artwork back then is just completely different than it is today, and so those things are far in the past. And they were wonderful. I'd go back and relive. I'd do a Groundhog Day every day. From art experience 20 years ago. Right, you didn't know how good it was, and but that's just no. So things aren't ever going to change. I think we just all have to have to appreciate what we have all the more, because it's going to be harder to get the things that we want. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think it makes me appreciate the hobby all the more because and what I have all the more. And I think everybody else should look at it in that same way. You're not going to be running around trying to get 10 John Byrne X-Men pages anymore, because at the end of the day, that's a whole house in Northeast Ohio, right? At $30,000 a piece, I can, for $300,000, I could buy a whole house and not have to worry about a home payment again. People aren't going to be owning that many. I had 5 Byrne X-Men pages at one time. I could never own that. I would have sold them a long time ago, and I did. But for that same reason, it's just like these are worth too much money. I can't keep these things forever. And if I did it now, I would only have one. But so no, I don't foresee those things changing. I mean, somebody had asked earlier, the question of where do I see CAF in 5 years, and it's really hard to look that far into the future on where things are going.
When I talked to you on the phone about a month and a bit ago, when we originally decided to set this up, you were feeling so confident. You were like, this hobby is going to last for 50 years, 100 years.
Oh, it is. Oh, without question, it will. I don't think anything I'm saying, or at least I don't think I was suggesting that. I think the hobby's going to.
Why do you think that? If the millennials don't follow in our footsteps and prop up the hobby, it must plummet. I mean, yes, some people are investing from outside,
but 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought the 90s kids are going to be in here buying, the art that they're buying today and spending more money on a Lobo cover than a Kirby cover from.
But those people were reading comics. The millennials didn't grow up reading comics. I teach them sometimes. They grow up with like social media and video games. They're not going to look at comic art in the same way, especially because for them it was created digitally, right?
Right. No, I understand, but no, I still think that we've talked about this recently. That the difference of what makes an art collector versus a comic book collector, and we as art collectors have an appreciation for art, and it's not something that the common person has. Right. My comparison being is I could go into Chardon today and then ask, of the 20,000 people that live there, how many have been to the Cleveland Museum of Art in the last 5 years? Probably not even 1% of them have. And that's because appreciating art and wanting to own art is a very fine thing that you do. And it's and that's why we're not the same, we all love comics. It's how we got turned on to the art in the first place. But those of us who collect art really do it because we have whatever. It's this certain tick that all of us have that make us want to own original art, and that is a huge difference. And there will always be that group of people that will turn to illustration art, science fiction, fantasy art, comic book art, because they have an appreciation for the medium. Now, we can only hope that artists will continue to create traditional works going forward. I mean, we know that that's going to begin. That is dwindling, as we've seen. But the art is still out there. The art from the 90s and of the last 20 years, there's a ton of traditional artwork that people are still going to collect. So yeah, I'm not saying that there won't be a point in time when everything's digital and you only look at it on your iPad or whatever there is 50 years from now. But I can't see how there won't be people who always are collecting, the original art because they love art. And it's just, and whereas some people like to collect Bob Ross, landscape paintings because that is art to them. Art to us is fine illustration art from, stories that we've read, stories that we haven't read. Like I've said today, it's like, I want to get a Gene Colan Dracula page. I never even read Dracula. But why do I want to get it? Because I want a darn good Colan Dracula example because I know that's important. And it would be an honor to own a page. And I think, as a collector, I've evolved in 20 years to the point where I look at it like that. And I think that the newer collectors coming in today who are starting out just getting commissions and convention sketches or whatever they're getting are going to evolve in that same manner as their appreciation richens over time. And so I do. I firmly, in my lifetime, this hobby won't go anywhere.
If we can we kind of nail like what is inside the atomic nucleus of the collector? To me, I always thought it was nostalgia. I thought it's nostalgia that's propping up this market. Like, why would somebody pay X number of thousands of dollars for something? Well, because that comic or that page meant so much to them as a child, and you can't really, at least we haven't found a price cap for childhood.
Right. Well, like I think my story is as simple, as many other collectors, where you collect because you want to own something from a favorite story or whatnot. But and then I was buying things because I wanted to have my family get off on comic art like I do, and then now I've evolved to I want a good example. I've never owned a Kirby artwork, and I've never owned anything by Colin or Carmen Infantino. And never wanted to, but now guess what? I do. As I've gotten older and I've looked at the work and I realized the importance. So I think it's just the evolution of me of being a collector. So I don't. I have no fears about the next 50 years of original comic art collecting. Really,
I don't want to. I think like my views are probably against the grain when I'm looking at the comments too and seeing that. And I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole. I know you did want to talk about some of the other things you're doing with CAF, or did you want to go back to that? I never had a chance to ask you about the websites you're designing. Like that's a big thing for you now, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I'm always doing something. I'm working on Catskill Comics website right now that I hope to have before I leave on vacation. So, I'm typically I'm working on this Albert Moore redesign that is taking me longer than I wish it would. I just released Anthony's new website. So we're always doing other projects for dealers.
Sure.
As I
put in the Are you involved in Spencer's new website? He's been talking about it for a while.
No, I'm not. If I was involved in it, it would have been done 10 years ago.
Okay.
I've gone to Spencer. Well, I don't go to him anymore because in the last 5 years, he's always says that he's almost done with his new site. And it's been that way. That has been the line he's told me since I've first reached out to him saying, I'd love to help you get out of the 1990s. But he's always, that's his goal. I mean, and I joked with Scott Kress from Catskill. I'm like, you're that one step up from, you might be just into the 2000s, but you're really close to the 1990s too, in his current site. But some people have things, they do them in their own way. So I don't, I think if,
And Spencer, I don't know Catskill, but Spencer still has like a huge following. I hate to admit it, but every time I go on a site, I get like a nostalgic flush because part of the problem
every time those stars start twinkling in the background, I know.
It's just he's got old pieces that sold like years and years ago for the prices they were listed at, and for a second, my brain fantasizes about pressing buy and actually being able to buy that.
Well, right. Well, that's the problem. I mean, and I'm not dissing on Spencer at all. I mean, he's done just fine with what he's had, but that's he doesn't have the ability to press a button and say, I want this. You have to email him about it, and
that's true.
That's been the drawback, and that's the same problem that Catskill had. Was they were basically just fielding emails and then figuring out how to do that. And our system is much easier. It has the ability to manage all the requests that come in and mark them as completed, and everything that you'd want. I mean, our system allows for dealers to be reps, and they can take commissions. They can set the commission rate per artist. They can generate reports, so they can write checks to pay their artists. And I basically made the whole business model for an art rep inside the programming, whether they're an art rep or not. We built the code around the idea that it could service someone like a Mike Berkey versus somebody like a Felix Liu and everybody in between. But as far as CAF goes, I mean, all I can hope for is that we get to a point where I can finally wrap up this darn mobile friendly redesign. Somebody asked earlier about, is it the ads that hold me back? And it's the ads don't hold me back anymore. I used to be concerned about things related to advertising on the site, but anymore I don't. I would hide an ad if I had to make my site mobile friendly. The reality is it's just the time to do it, or to bring somebody in and pay him $30,000 to do all that work for me. And it's not, I don't have $30,000 to pay somebody. And I also don't have 500 hours of free time to do it myself. especially this last year. I'm trying. Trust me, I am working harder than ever on. There's different projects that we've got on, going on for CAF. But that's really we're back again at a crossroads. It's like, okay, things are moving back in the right direction. We have some revenue coming in, and I think we're spending that in the right places. And I have a full-time editor on the site since August of last year. So all these things have really, which has helped me have the free time to think about, what I want to do with my time in the hobby and how the hobby can benefit from whatever that time is, and use and just optimize that, because I'm always, I'm not really thinking about where I want to be. I mean, I know it, well, I can't say that. I know where I want to be in 20 years, but whatever it is, I want to be very involved with the hobby 20 years from now, and enjoying myself even more than I am today, but hopefully not working as hard as I am, doing 10 or 12 consecutive days of, live streams. It's been so important during COVID to get out there and do these things. It really has. I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world, but the other day I hit a wall where I just was like, I can't wait for this vacation coming up, because I can't keep. Yeah. I mean, people don't understand. As this seems so casual and fun, but the truth is, when these shows end, I'm like wired. I can't sleep. I'm like Nick Barucci. I stay up till 4 a.m. I can't sleep because I'm just on a high, and then I've got other work to do, and then it's like, it's just not the schedule that the life of a live streamer is not. It's not for a 53-year-old. It's meant for kids who are 18 who want to play games all the time. So, sure. So that has been the biggest adjustment.
Well, your son's kind of following in your footsteps, so he might be you 20 years from now, and you might be like Marlon Brando to his Pacino in The Godfather Part 1. You may sit back and say, I didn't want this for you. And he'll go, we'll get there, Pop. We'll get there.
Right.
Seriously, even though I'm skeptical, I hope you're right. I hope, like me and Mike and Bob, who I mentioned earlier in the show, look back at this, when we're like 80 and go like, remember when we read whatever, in the 80s when we read Love and Rockets and were blown away by, Gilbert's stories of Palomar. I mean, that's what I really hope. I never thought I would. I never thought my love of comics would last. I sold my entire collection. Not my entire, but like almost all of it for $500 to some, shark, because I was moving, and I just, and then the thing about the art is that it really kind of came and supplanted that. It really bit me. And then now I'm trying to kind of get off of that, but I don't want to get rid of my art. And what I realize is so much of it is nostalgia.
But it's also, you get attached to the art too. I mean, I think that
appreciation of craft, which is what you were talking about.
Right. That's why we are a very unique breed. There are some folks out there that would like to think that the hobby could double or triple, and that is what would sustain it. But the problem is, you can't like click your fingers and create an art collector. Doesn't work like that. Again, our brains are wired differently, and I think that. When you approach comic art collecting and you try to look at it and put a business model on top of it, like you're gonna be able to revolutionize things by creating another 10 times the collectors, it just doesn't work like that. People who go to Avengers movies, they'd rather buy a T-shirt with the Thanos glove on it, than I'm sorry, an Infinity Gauntlet. Sorry, everybody, it's a little late. But you know what I mean? They'd rather have that than a piece of artwork, or they'd rather have the comic or the trade or whatever. But buy art, my God, that's like you might as well ask them to speak a foreign language. It just doesn't work like that. And it's nothing wrong with that. But that's why we are, and there always will be people like us that appreciate the medium, that appreciate the artists and the writers. We just look at this thing in a very different way, and I think that we always will. I mean, I enjoyed comics, as I've said the story recently too, that, I collected the comics I bought when I was younger. I bought primarily because of the art. When I saw something that was cool on the cover, or, back in the day, I could be at the drugstore and thumb through the pages. If I thought the art was cool, I mean, I would just go through and look at it, and, I can't even say I always read them all. I mean, but I just loved the artwork. So, we're wired in a way, and it's just special. And, and again, I like the fact that that I get to play the role that that I do in it, and that I get to to be the conduit for the people who appreciate things the exact same way that I do. And I mean, I don't know how else to say it. That's why, you know, CAF was always just meant to be something fun for everybody. And, you know, the intent, like I said, it's just weird that I've kind of got to this point where it is my business and it's fun and it's great. Like Nick, I asked Nick about how do you keep the hours that you do, you know, Nick Ferrucci, and he always says it's true. Like if you're doing something you love, it never matters. You know, you just really, you can push yourself to the limits of, you know, sleep and everything, and you'll bend over backwards to make everybody happy, because at the end of the day,
or
that's
cocaine.
I can't say as I've ever done cocaine. I've done a few things, but I have not done cocaine. I drink a cup of tea in the afternoon, and that is what helps get me through the day. Although I can honestly tell you, I've been taking about a half-hour nap almost every afternoon.
That's great. If you can.
Because I just closed the door. It's like I'm crashing, but usually that's all I need. Sometimes it's like only 10 minutes, because I just have to turn my brain off, because it's so it's so hard to get prepared for a lot of these shows. I mean, not this one. This is easy, just talking. But you know, when I've got to prep images, or the Dueling Dealers show is grueling. Putting together the episode that we did with the Billigan thing, that I was so exhausted when that show finally happened. I was just so thankful to have it over, because I was so miserable by the time it was done. I mean, we literally spent.
I think show's kind of spawning, because Glenn is sort of doing something that's kind of like that, and I think the other dealers are going to be like, "There's money here." I hope like it's not like a gimmick that wears out, the dueling thing, but it seems like it's branching out, and people are finding that's a very accessible way to buy art, I guess. You know.
Right. Well, I always knew somebody would. I mean, I don't know. You know, I can only tell you that I had been asked numerous times to do claim sales, and by a couple different dealers, and I always turned them down, because I just felt that claim sales were boring, and so, you know, at any rate, you know, the whole concept of Dueling Dealers is so much bigger than, you know, a claim sale ever, you know, anything you've ever seen. And I knew that once we knew it was good after a couple episodes, I was certain that I was going to be, you know, that people were going to look at it and take it, you know, take those ideas that were positive in it, that weren't claim sale oriented, and make them their own. I never thought it would be somebody in comic art, of course. I mean, I would have thought I would have been very happy if somebody who dealt in comics or antiques that were doing claim sales said, "Hey, let's take this concept and copy it down to the everything, and then just use it." But whatever. At the end of the day, I don't care. We're all in this hobby together, and it's too darn small to have grudges against people for their lack of creativity or whatnot. But
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just
I mean, it's so
talking about how your things snowball.
Right. I think it's the thing is, I think that the more ways that anybody can go around and sell art, I think the better. I look at it. I mean, you saw Frank Cho doing things with comic shops online through their Facebook streams early on in COVID. They were brilliant. The thought of selling artwork for an hour while doing an interview. So trust me, I borrowed thoughts from all these other things to come up with, you know, the dueling dealer concept.
Have you gotten any like really interesting, crazy ideas that people have like pitched or like suggested to you, but you just haven't figured out how to do it feasibly or economically? Like really interesting, crazy.
No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, people don't pitch me their ideas, you know, anyway, but no, I mean, no, I don't know. Trust me, I've had far more bad ideas than good ideas. You know, Dueling Dealers was just a fun, you know, fun way to do something. And honestly, I had several dealers, you know, like Anthony, he kept coming to me, let's do a claim sale, do it with me, you know, I knew I couldn't do that because as you know, running Comic Art Live and owning CAF, I have responsibility to so many other sellers out there. I could never do a show with one person because I'd get in trouble. You know, I mean, so or I'd have to do a show every night for a different dealer. And so that's why I thought claim sales would be boring. How is a claim sale going to be fun for me to sit there and chat. I mean, I enjoyed the prop store preview I just did, but I don't have a lot that I can, that where I'm engaged in the conversation. That I can talk about the art too, but I'm really there to be just the quiet host to move you from point A to point B.
Sure.
Dueling Dealers was more, I saw it as an opportunity to be more engaging and be a part of the show, which, in most cases, I'm not. When I'm doing just a standard interview or I'm doing a preview for an auction. So,
Yeah. I can tell you're flagging, and we'll wrap this up soon because you must be
only a little bit, but yeah, no. So at any rate, I really enjoy, these are the kind of problem solving things that we do, whether it's on CAF or it was cool to come up with something like that because it was the first time I was able to look at the live streaming things that we had done for the 9 months leading up to that and look at it in a creative way and then kind of impose those thoughts and a collective, because I had to go to, in that case, I had to go to Anthony and Mike early and say, I want to do it. I want to do this and I want to do it with you. And here's why, and let's do it together. Like everything that I've done in the past, whether it was doing the regatta or building that first stick sculpture where I got 3 or 4 other people to help me. I come in with the idea. I say, let's just believe in me for a second and give it a try and let's see what happens. It could totally fail. I even, like I told Sleep Aid from McHale, I had told those guys, I said, I don't even care if we sell any art. I think this will just be fun to be on screen together and having a good time, because that's not what anything else we're doing on online is fun. It's interesting, it's engaging, it's informative, but how often are we getting to laugh? And and the greatest thing that's happened out of all of the work that we've done through Comic Art Live is the engagement with the audience. The fact that all these people are still here watching us after 2 hours and have engaged in their own conversation throughout all this. I was watching all that, doing interviews and thinking, I want to be in the chat with them having a good time. They're having more fun watching me than I am sitting up here doing these chats. And that really was what led us to doing the Dueling Dealers. Was like, I want to be having a good time like these guys. I want to be telling the jokes about mini golf balls and things. And I couldn't do that when I was doing these stodgy interview shows all the time.
I always wondered. I mean, I had no idea you had such an artsy history. I thought maybe you were a techie guy that just kind of came up with this kind of idea for CAF off the top of your head, and nobody just kind of could have predicted where the art market would go. One other thing I do want to mention before I forget that I really liked. I learned a bunch of things about CAF by participating in the live show. And one of the things that asked is, if you upload a piece of art, would you like to put it as part of your database? And I found that really interesting because as somebody who's interested in comics history and the form of comics, having a database that can be very accessible, not just to academics, but to people who write about comics or who are just interested in comics, and having that universally ready and accessible would be really good. I don't know if people remember, but a few months ago, the Library of Congress in Washington, they did a sort of like a live event with their art for Amazing Fantasy 15, the Spider-Man origin story. And I attended that because, I was fascinated to see the art, but really it was like geared towards kids, and that's fine. But, doing events about the history of art with the stuff you have at your fingertips, plus, having that there for people to be able to study, I think that would be a very benevolent thing. That would be in another direction that's very important to me, which is learning.
I mean, I was going to say, I think I saw Ruben say he wanted to see some of my art. I might be able to get some. But I could say that one of the most rewarding things that I did in the last year was no, I got the wrong box. When I did the video with the guy who owned the New York Comic Arts Gallery. It was something that preserved history, a moment in time for him. And I don't know, Ruben, I'll have to pull something out another time. My mom dropped off a box the other day of old artwork that I had done, and I don't particularly see it right now. But
$1,000 a page.
Yeah, right. All I could say is I could read my signature back then. I can't read it anymore. But no, I mean, I'd love to do more of that. It was a very time consuming task. I don't know if you saw that video or not. I released it at the beginning of the year, and if you go to the YouTube channel, there's a section on I think it's like comic. Gosh, I can't even remember what it's called. I'm sorry. Should know this, but it was really fun. And the thing is, I interviewed this gentleman over like 3 different live streams like this that were recorded that nobody could see, and then I cobbled it all together into a 1-hour like a documentary about the guy, and took photos from his gallery and his interactions and stuff. And it was so much fun, and it was so rewarding because all these people who, he was only that like out there for like 3 years, and then he disappeared. And he worked with Wrightson and Cluda and Jeff Jones. He worked, everybody at the studio, but he just went and took a totally different field from going and doing a comic art gallery. And we did this thing, and I had people contacting me for like 2 weeks after that, wanting his contact information, because they're like, this guy changed my life. He doesn't know it. A guy who was like in charge of Sesame Street, their art director, contacts me, and he's like, you got to get me Mark's email address. He doesn't know how much a big influence he was on me. So I thoroughly enjoyed doing that, but it was a big project to record, say 6 hours of interviews, and then take that and condense it down to a 1-hour documentary. It was incredibly fun, and it was so rewarding to see that you were able to change, because this guy, he's emailed me like every month. He sends me an email just thanking me for the work, having done that, and have preserved his story, because he's met so many old friends, and yeah, I mean, again, preserving the history of the hobby and of the creators and the people who've kind of got us from there to here is really important. I mean, we're doing that tonight by doing this interview in its own way, but I'd love to do more of that if I had the time. If I had a grant, I'd probably have about 5 different projects in the queue. And where would I start? I really would want to go back to those people who were selling art early on. If I really got motivated when Russ Cochran died,
If you ever want help with that, like down the road, keep me in mind, because that's why I write about comics. Because this is stuff that's very meaningful. It was the bridge to literature and knowledge for me when I was young. It was the doorway to being a writer and a thinker, and it's magical stuff. We should probably end soon, unless there's anything else that you want to talk about.
No. Yeah, we're probably anyway, yes. Yeah, Rich, one of these days I will show off the vault of John Byrne recreations, because it is massive. But no, I mean, I think we've touched on everything, Koom. Probably more than I was planning to, but
yeah, it was great for me. I mean, I got to pick your brain, and I think people found it interesting, and
Yes, and Mikhail's he's paid me $19 now to take a nap. So sleep aid. I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
I don't have a PlayStation though, Mikhail. Unfortunately. And I don't have any weed. I should also say that, because you said PlayStation and weed. Yep, neither one of those. But yeah, that's all. I mean, I think that I've appreciated the journey to get here.
Sure.
I don't take any day for granted. I can't, I still look at it and I don't understand how I've managed to do the thing, to be able to do all these fun things and not, and I didn't bankrupt my family at any point in time, and we all love each other. And I've made more friends in the last year in the hobby than I probably did in the first 18, and that's really the best thing about what I'm doing. And I only want to multiply that times 10, over the next 18 years. So.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks everybody for listening. And I used to say to all of the comic book creators I used to interview, or not all of them, but many of them, let's do this again in 5 years. Let's do it again in 10 years, and let's see where things are at with the hobby and ourselves and with what you're doing, because I know it's going to be interesting.
No, I'd love to do that, Kim. I really would, because you're the first person, I think, in probably 15 years to ever want to talk to me about
well, not just that, but it's a first for us. I think this is our first video cast. We've had We partnered with a podcast called Deconstructing Comics Podcast that I've interviewed people through. But that was always an audio thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a first for us to do a video
No,
cast. I don't know if
I
Eric's
appreciate it.
still here, but, you know, thanks, Eric, for agreeing to
No,
this.
no, and he helped us, definitely getting everything
Oh.
hooked up onto your channels as well. So, again, well, so thank you, Koom. Thank you, everybody, for wanting to listen to more of my story. My favorite color is black, and my favorite ice cream is probably, I don't know, chocolate chip cookie dough. There you go. So now you know everything about me. we can move on from here and make another memorable 18 or 19 years together, because I don't see myself going anywhere, and we're going to have a good time together and continue to work together to make the hobby what we all want it to be. So
Sounds good.
all right, thanks again, Koom.